Welcome to the Brainiate Show, where we talk about all things Salesforce, sharing the coolest features, solutions, and best practices to turn you into a Salesforce rock star. Here's your host, former attorney turned Salesforce consultant and trainer, David Giller.
And I don't know why it freezes like this. I have to figure out why it consistently freezes like that. Hello and happy Tuesday, everyone. I am so glad to see all of you here today. And by the way, welcome to all of those folks who are not only watching live, but those who are watching the replay. I am super excited to also have with me Gidi Abramovich. I keep pointing in the wrong direction. Gidi, how are you today?
Oh, it's right.
It's mirror image, yes.
Yeah,
Gidi, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Okay, so my name is Gidi and I'm from Israel. I'm a Salesforce tech lead at Yotpo, which is an e-commerce marketing platform. And I'm very happy and excited to be here.
And I am thrilled to have you here, Gidi. So today we are going to be talking about two really cool topics that hopefully will help all of you to supercharge your productivity and maybe impress a whole lot of people at work. So I'm going to be first. I'm going to be talking about the show. For those of you who have not joined before, this show is broken up into three segments. The first segment is what I often refer to as the talking head segment, where we're just like explaining some type of a concept. Today, I'm actually going to be sharing. I won't call it a presentation, an outline, a checklist, where I'm going to be talking primarily about how you can leverage a checklist, or I should say plural, checklists as Salesforce professionals in order to make your life so much easier and avoid frustration and wasted time and hopefully even delegate some things to other people. So that's what we're going to be covering in the first segment. In the second segment, it's all about this guy over here. Gidi's going to be showing us about custom permissions in Salesforce, not to be confused with permission sets. Totally different. Custom permissions in Salesforce and how you can use custom permissions in order to give some, I'll call it special features to some very specific individuals. For example, when you need to bypass a validation rule. And I don't want to steal Gidi's thunders. I'm not going to give all of the different examples away, but it's some really cool stuff that I think a lot of you are going to find very applicable to your day-to-day jobs. And the third segment, as always, is open Q&A. So let's jump in. Gidi, you ready? Jump in for the first topic?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All righty. So we're talking about Salesforce checklists for Salesforce admins. So along with that, what we need to basically figure out, by the way, during this session, I am not necessarily giving anyone any type of checklist. That will be coming. I'm actually working on quite a few template checklists to give out throughout the Salesforce community. But what I really want to do is I want to educate you on the power of checklists and why checklists are so important. And by the way, for those who are wondering, the inspiration behind this came from a book called The Checklist Manifesto. Very popular book. I've actually been looking for it. I don't know where it is. I think my son might have stolen it from me. Checklist Manifesto is a phenomenal book and really demonstrates the power of using checklists for any industry, for any type of, not only in the business world, also in your personal lives, to help eliminate stress and have a consistent process, and even to delegate things to other people. And honestly, not only can it save you money and time, it can also save people's lives, because in the book Checklist Manifesto, they actually talk about using checklists in a hospital setting, in the healthcare industry, and having easily accessible checklists, a consistent process will allow you to make sure that we're following a consistent process in order to save people's lives and eliminate harm or minimize harm or risk in so many situations. Before I show you what I'm about to show you, which is my checklist for this topic, my outline essentially for this topic, What I wanted to do is I just also want to share with you that I get made fun of all the time by my family in particular for my embracing of checklists, not only from a work perspective, but in my personal life. So I have checklists for pretty much everything. I have checklists on, I have reminders on my calendar, for example, when to take out the trash twice a week, when to take out recycling. I have checklists, for example, when it comes to traveling. So if I'm going on any type of trip, I have checklists with different segments in the checklist. In other words, optional segments if I'm traveling by car, if I'm traveling over a weekend, if I'm traveling with little kids, if I'm traveling with family, if I'm traveling for business meetings versus non-business meetings, if I'm traveling by plane, if I'm and each one will have different components in there of what's applicable for those different types of scenarios. When we apply the same type of concept to our lives as Salesforce professionals, we could start to imagine that this could probably be really helpful as we're doing different things in our day-to-day job. So with that being said, let's jump in and I will show you my checklist for this topic. So let me just adjust my screen over here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to really be talking about why are checklists important and how can it impact productivity. And in case it's not already super obvious, let's just make this a little bit bigger. And let me adjust Gidi, who looks a little bit small right now. Okay, I took care of that. So why are checklists so important? So what is a checklist? A lot of times I've heard people saying online, like, oh, if I know something really well, like I don't need a checklist. It's all in my head. I remember, I will never forget. You might be proud of that, but it's actually a little bit taxing on your brain to have to try to remember things like that all the time. So why not get it down on paper so that nobody can blame you later for forgetting something? Why don't you jot it down so that you could potentially delegate it to someone else? And also, once you have it written out, you can easily follow all of the items listed in that checklist without thinking about it. You could be listening to an audiobook while following your checklist of the things that you need to do for that type of scenario, whatever that scenario might be. So I strongly recommend embracing the concept of starting to leverage checklists for even those things that you might say, I will never forget. I do it all the time. I know it inside and out. I've been doing it for the last 20 plus years. So I know all of the steps involved in it anyway. Go ahead and jot it down for yourself. And it will allow you, you will see that when you have something easily accessible like that, it will allow you to just focus on performing the acts without actually thinking it through. And it will not be as mentally taxing for you to go ahead and complete that particular checklist. The benefits of using a checklist in order to stay on track. Well, when you have it written down that in this type of scenario, make sure to ask the following questions. In this type of scenario, make sure to look for X, Y, and Z. In this type of use case, make sure that we also have A, B, and C. By experiencing those what I'll call variations of the standard process that you have, you can start to help your future self by jotting down, oh, in this type of scenario, when we have a new user who's from this particular group and also needs the following special permissions, here are the questions that we need to ask before going ahead and setting them up as a new user. So especially when you uncover some of these deviations from the normal process, start jotting them down, because eventually you are going to get hit with either an identical use case or a very similar use case, and you will have the checklist available to you. And it's going to make your own life so much easier. And like I mentioned before, it allows you to delegate stuff to other people. Even if you're only delegating 3 of the items on the entire list to someone else, you already have it written out, so you can send it over to someone else to help out with some of it. Now, by the way, especially if you're playing the role of a Salesforce admin. You're responsible for Salesforce at any organization. And you have a checklist of, let's say, setting up a new user or importing data or transferring records between users. Let's say we want to reallocate all of the accounts that we have in the database among the users that we have today on our sales team. By having a checklist of things to look for, questions to ask, considerations that need to be thought through before going ahead and doing that, it will also allow you to proactively cut and paste that checklist, send it out to the folks who are asking for this new thing, and have them give you the answers so that this way everyone is on the same page. So you're implementing a consistent process. You're getting everyone on the same page. So more people benefit from it more than just you for your own productivity. So how do we create a checklist that works for you? Honestly, the easiest way is as you're doing something, even if you realize, oh yeah, I have to do this again twice a week, 3 times a week, I need to do this thing, whatever it is, just go ahead and jot it down, even in high level bullet points. Just jot it down for yourself, give it a name of something that you can easily identify, use whatever tool you want. It does not matter where you store the information. It could be a Google Doc. It could be a tool like you could see here, I'm using Notion. It could be a tool like Evernote. It could be a OneNote. It could be a Microsoft Word document. You could use Jira or Confluence. It does not matter what tool you are using. Just jot it down somewhere so that you can easily find it. So my recommendation there is, regardless of what tool you use, try to be consistent and always use the same tool. Not that you should have some checklists over here and some checklists over there. Try to be consistent by having everything in one place so you have a very easy way to find all of those checklists and just start super high level. Don't overcomplicate anything. Think about like what in broad strokes, what are the not even the steps of what you need to do. What are the key milestones that, or the phases that are appropriate for this type of process that I'm working on right now? So just by starting to do that at the highest level, next time when you need to revisit that process and you're looking at that checklist and you realize, oh yeah, you know what? I should also jot down these 3 things that I do for this particular phase or milestone. And you'll see it will start to evolve organically. And that's a good thing. No checklist, no matter how much anyone says it's written in stone. You're always going to, Gidi and I were actually talking about this before we went live, that I do this myself all the time. And I'm sure you do too, that each time you're working on a particular process, you're looking for ways to make it even more efficient, even more streamlined. And part of that is doing that brain dump of putting it on paper, when I say paper, digital paper, and creating that list so that you don't have to stress and worry and remember, oh yeah, what are those things that we need to do? Someone just gave me a spreadsheet. What are the things we need to do before importing it into Salesforce? You have it written down for yourself. Your past self prepared it for you today. So take the action and go ahead and start doing that brain dump for yourself.
David, I also
Yeah.
think it's very good for your colleagues. So you write it down, and it's very helpful for them to
100%. Because by writing it down and by having your colleagues know that you have it jotted down somewhere, even if you're not. So like before I talked about, let's say, I'm going to keep the simplest example. You have one or multiple Google Docs with your checklist. You don't even need to share those Google Docs with them. But when someone asks, hey, we have 3 new employees starting on Monday, can you set them up in Salesforce? And very often, we all know we're lucky if we get a first name and a last name, let alone an email address, and what kind of permissions they need to have in Salesforce. What is it that they need to, what is their role in the organization? By having your checklist and simply cutting and pasting it in a response email or creating a new Microsoft Word document and sending it over to them, here's some of the information that I need in order to set it up. Yes, your colleagues will benefit from it tremendously. They will also start to respect you even more because they're going to realize that you're not just flying by the seat of your pants. You have a process that you're actually going through, and it's okay if that particular process, that evolution of the process is still going to evolve, that it doesn't cover every use case. That's still fine. Gidi, any other thoughts that you want to share?
The only thing, one of my favorite checklists is after refresh. There are some actions I like to do and I must do. So I have a long list which is shared with my colleagues, and then we know what to do exactly afterwards because it's really uh, hard to forget all the actions that needs to be done.
It's very true. And honestly, I have a checklist for myself and for my team. Anytime we're setting up even a brand new Salesforce org for any client. So aside from the gathering of the business requirements, aside from all of that, I sort of have my own, I'll call it template of the things to look for and to do to set up the pages for maximum simplicity. And so I agree with you. After doing a refresh of a sandbox, everything associated with moving configuration from a sandbox, from one sandbox to another, or from UAT environment to production, of even educating your users on new features that you have that are now available, whether you did anything to create those features or not. So even if it's features that are coming out natively from Salesforce as part of one of the seasonal releases. So you can apply checklists for all of those things. And by the way, what we have right here is how can Salesforce professionals use checklists to increase efficiency and minimize frustrations. So what we have over here, you're going to see that I broke it up into 4 different kinds of checklists. This is how I think about it, at least. You have task checklists. So what do we mean by task checklist? The different things that we or others need to do for, and these are just examples, onboarding a new user, or a user leaves the organization, reassigning records. Someone is requesting to import data into the system. Maybe you have a request for a new integration with another system, or like we talked about a moment ago, a new enhancement rollout, whether it's our own enhancement or Salesforce is releasing an enhancement. Let's take multi-factor authentication as an example. Whether we like it or not, it's coming. So, or I should say, it arrived. So enforceability is a whole other issue. But anyway, so these are the kinds of things where we can identify for ourselves, here are the tasks that either we need to do or other people need to do in order to perform any of these processes. So those are task checklists. The next one that I want to suggest is training checklists. As Salesforce professionals, whether your role is admin, BA, project manager, doesn't really matter. You're going to have people that need to get trained in Salesforce. So some of the things that we need to think about, that we need answers for, we need clarity on. Is it going to be remote training? Is it going to be in-person classroom style training? Are some people going to be trained remote and other people are going to be trained in person? What about the curriculum? Did anyone define what the curriculum is? Maybe we have different versions of the curriculum for different types of users. What is the timing going to be? Are these people expected to get trained today or tomorrow, or are they getting trained next week or next month? What is the schedule going to be like? Are they going to be available all day? Are we expecting to be like boot camp style for 1 or 2 days in person or even remote training? Or is it going to be sprinkled in, let's say, 1-hour increments over the course of several days or several weeks? What is the duration of the training? How long is it expected to last? When do we expect the training to be completely done? When we are doing the training, which org are they going to get trained on? Are these people going to get trained in the production org or in a sandbox? And what kind of data is going to be in that org? What kind of data is going to be available to them? Are we going to include hands-on exercises as part of the training? Or are we expecting them to simply sit back and watch like a Netflix movie? Which, by the way, not that effective. Just saying, that's a whole other topic. It's much better to have them actually doing stuff in Salesforce, doing hands-on exercises throughout the entire training. And lastly, recording of the training. Are we going to actually record the training? Small tip, don't even bother trying to record in-person classroom style training. It never, ever, ever comes out good. And the reason for that is you have way too many factors going on. You have the trainer at the front of the room who's likely walking around a little bit. You have the whatever is being shown on the big screen, on the projector. You have folks in the room who are asking questions. the need for the microphones and where the camera needs to be is essentially everywhere. I personally have not found, even while doing in-person classroom style training for some very large companies with some very generous budgets, didn't matter how much money you throw at it. It's really difficult to do in-person classroom style recordings. So even if you are going to do that, I strongly recommend you still have recordings available. You create the recordings of trainings for folks who join the company 2 days or 2 weeks after the in-person training has ended. So those are training checklists. What we have after that are troubleshooting checklists. We all know, as Salesforce admins, we are usually on the receiving end of all different sorts of issues that users are experiencing. So let's take some examples over here. Users who are unable to log in. We might have a checklist that says, okay, let's confirm what URL are they trying to log into? Are they trying to log into production or sandbox? Do they think they're logging into the sandbox, but they're using the production URL and that's why they can't log in? Like, which URL are they going to exactly? Confirm if the user is still active in the org that they are trying to log into. Confirm what username they are trying to log into and whether or not they actually know the password. In other words, go in as an admin to see their login history to see whether or not they've actually put in an incorrect password or they never actually attempted to log into that org with that username. Confirm whether or not there are any IP restrictions that might be preventing them from logging in. So it might not be a URL issue. It might not be a username password issue. It might simply be that there are IP restrictions, which may or may not be justified, that are preventing them from being able to log in. Confirm even the login hours. Maybe they were set up to not be able to log in during the time slot when they are actually trying to log in. Another example, validation rules are not working. Confirm whether or not it's active. I can't tell you how many times I've done this myself. Validation rules, workflow rules, process builder, flow. You forget to click the activate button and you wonder why it's not working and you're pulling your hair out and you can't figure out what's going on. I got it right. Yeah, it wasn't active. So confirm whether or not the validation rule is active. Confirm whether or not it was working in the past. Confirm whether it only works in some limited use cases or it doesn't work for any use case whatsoever. So these are the kinds of things that you can try to look at. And you can also think about other scenarios associated to user visibility issues. So if a user says, hey, when I look at the contact record, I'm not able to see their phone number. Log in as them, look to see whether or not the phone number is there. It might be completely justified. They are 100% right that there's a field level security that is preventing them from seeing it. Maybe they're looking at the wrong record. They're looking at the account instead of the contact, or the contact instead of the account. It might be a page layout issue where they were assigned a page layout that is unknown to us, a new mystery that suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and for some reason the phone number is not appearing on the page layout. So there are a lot of different things that you can think of when addressing some of these common troubleshooting type issues that we might experience as a Salesforce admin. The next one that we have is what I call coordination checklists. So these are not necessarily tasks for us to do, or it's not associated with troubleshooting, but it's associated with things scenarios where we're trying to coordinate efforts with other people. So let's take a new enhancement request. Confirm which users are impacted. Confirm which records are impacted. Okay, you want to have automation that every time the following exists, then something else should automatically happen. Some other record should get updated. A task should get created. An alert should go out. Let's confirm for which users are we actually talking about? Is it for all opportunities or only some opportunities? Is it only for your opportunities or for everyone's opportunities? What are we talking about exactly? Confirm the use cases, the actual logic that they are asking for to implement in whatever enhancement they're asking for. Confirm that the business problem is actually solved with the proposed solution. So you want to confirm that what they're asking for isn't just something shiny and new that they just want to implement because they saw a cool YouTube video about it, that it's actually solving some kind of problem within the organization. Confirm the authority of the person submitting the request. In other words, are they truly a subject matter expert? Do they actually have authority to even ask for this thing? Or do we need to seek approval from someone higher up within the organization before we actually move forward on it? And then, of course, we have what I'll call the standard configuration items. Confirm that the configuration in the sandbox, besides doing the configuration in the sandbox, confirm that the configuration in the sandbox was actually tested and it matches the expectations of the folks who asked for that particular enhancement. Make sure to get sign off in the sandbox, migrate to either a UAT or a production instance, test it over there, and then get sign off over there. Similarly, we might have some coordination that might be needed for onboarding of new vendors or app exchange apps. There might be internal within your organization. There might be internal forms, approvals might be needed, budgets might need to be cleared before exploring any of these use cases. And of course, we have setup and logistics associated with business requirements workshops. In other words, a team says, the customer support team says, hey, we want to explore having a new process for managing and assigning all of our customer support tickets. Hey, Salesforce guy, or Salesforce gal, can you help us with that? So you should at least after the first time that you do it, do a little bit of a brain dump. What things did I need to set up in order to get us to actually conduct these workshops to gather the business requirements? It might be things like identifying the right people, identifying the right schedule, identifying how long it's going to take, identify who's going to be the subject matter expert that's going to be the main speaker, identify the different roles of all the people, identify to make sure that we're not missing out on other people who really need to be part of it, identify who's going to be capturing the notes and summarizing the output of these workshops for others to review and approve and to put into some finalized document that everyone can agree to. So there's all different kinds of stuff that can come out of just one thing, which is conducting a business requirements workshop. Similarly, we might have other logistics associated with an annual sales team meeting or on-site classroom style trainings like I mentioned before. You could have something as simple as internal lists for how to book an internal conference room within your organization. So these are the different categories of types of checklists that I think any Salesforce professional can benefit from. Tasks, training checklists, troubleshooting checklists, and coordination checklists. By the way, I am super curious to hear from all of you. If you could put in the comments the kind of checklist that if you had the magic wand, if you had all of the time in the world, if you could be the recipient of checklists that can help you be more productive, to be more efficient in what you do, what would those checklists be? What types of checklists do you think you can benefit from the most? So next, and I'm going to try to be super quick because I want to make sure to leave Gidi as much time as possible to cover some of his magic. So tips on creating effective checklists for Salesforce professionals. And honestly, I covered this at the get-go. Now that I'm looking at it, structure it logically. In other words, put your list in terms of phases or milestones of the typical progression of how you typically do things associated to that particular process. That will allow you to segment your checklist into different groups, which will then allow you to start getting a little bit more granular without feeling overwhelmed. So think of it like an outline where you can put headings, subheadings, and then have the appropriate level of indentation for the level of granularity that you want to get to. Simpler is better. Don't try to overcomplicate things. Don't try to boil the ocean. Just start off with the most basic, rudimentary. Even if you start off with 5 bullet points for any particular checklist, you can always elaborate further later on anytime you revisit it. But just to get started with a handful of items to jog your memory, you will already start to experience the efficiency of benefiting from having that checklist for yourself. Next, make sure to include helpful resources. If there are links to other articles, YouTube videos, internal documentation, internal forms that you might need to reference, links to even people's LinkedIn profiles. Hey, we need to follow up with Joe. Who the heck is Joe? Have a link to Joe's LinkedIn profile so actually remember who Joe is and what Joe looks like. So any links like that will help you and also help anyone else that you eventually want to delegate the work to in order to follow the same steps in a consistent manner, while also having the resources necessary that if they have other questions, when they experience some type of deviation from the typical process, they at least know where to turn to get the help that they need. And always remember to focus on the ultimate goal and the outcome, not just the exercise of completion of the tasks. Okay, next, how do you identify the areas where you can benefit the most from in terms of utilizing checklists? I'm looking on my teleprompter and like there's a little bit of a delay. So it's like, I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, sorry about that. A brain fart. So what I'll tell you is this. Again, don't try to overcomplicate things. You shouldn't feel too overwhelmed here. Identify the most complex and the most time-consuming processes that are draining your energy. Start with those. Start to identify which processes stress you out the most and start jotting down. It stresses you out. For me, for example, before traveling anywhere, I would get really stressed regarding perhaps forgetting something, arriving at my destination and realizing, oh, I forgot my toothbrush. It's not that getting a toothbrush is a big deal. It's just really stressful for me. So put a list together and put on there toothbrush. You're not going to forget it. And as you're building out your list, it's going to help you reduce a lot of that stress just by having it jotted down. So identify which processes stress you out the most. Identify which processes you would love to delegate. Because as I've mentioned a million times already, by jotting it down, you're already taking the first step towards being able to delegate it to other people. Which processes do you have the most notes for? That will also help you to basically create an outline. If you already have a lot of notes for it, chances are it's something that's important. It's a process that's important. Chances are it's a process that's complex. Chances are it's a process that requires a lot of reference material. So you can already start with that and turn that into an outline by linking to the existing documentation that you've already gathered. Anyway, that's essentially your homework and the next steps. From a community brainstorming perspective, in the comments, I want you to jot down the types of checklists that you would find most beneficial. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Gidi, do you have anything that you want to add to anything that I said, or you want to jump into your content?
You covered so much.
All right, let's jump into your stuff, Gidi.
Okay, great. Okay, so today I'm going to speak about custom permissions, and I really, really love custom permission. I feel that sometimes we forget about them and what they can bring us to the org. So custom permissions give you a way to provide access to custom processes or apps. Custom processes can be accessed through code, flows, validation rules, formulas, Lightning components, Visual Force pages, and so on. And I consider custom permission as a way to flag a single user or a group of users. So this way, you can allow or prevent users from viewing or accessing different elements or actions in your org. So think of a scenario where you are requested to select various users that do not share the same profile or role. This is where custom permission shines. So let's start. So today I will demonstrate a different ways where you can use custom permission to your advantage. And please feel free to ask any question at any time. David is reading the comments. I cannot read them. Let's see. So the first thing I want to show you is how to create custom permission. So we go to the setup. Sorry, and all right, custom permissions. So here, as you can see, I already created a few ones. So what we need is to click the new, provide a useful name. So let's write Salesforce Admin, for example. On every org I work, every time I create a custom permission of Salesforce Admin and I connected, whether it's to the admin profile or as a custom permission to the user with a permission set. I'll show you in a minute. So there is the API name. Don't forget to write a useful description and save it. So every time, sorry, we already have it. So let's put admins. So every time I create custom permission, I immediately create permission set. Because there are two ways to assign custom permission to users, whether through permission set to a user or through the profile, which I'll show in a minute. So I create a new permission set with the same name. And now I go here, I find the custom permissions. I click on edit and I add the same custom permission I created now and I save it. That's all. So if I go to a certain user, I'm going to Dan, for example, and I edit the assignments, I can assign the Salesforce admins to his user. And now the custom permission will be assigned to him. So in a minute, we'll see what advantage does it bring us. I will just demonstrate on the profile itself, we can assign the single custom permission we created right now. And that's it. It's assigned twice, but it doesn't really matter. So the first thing I want to demonstrate is about leads. So David, are you familiar with the validation rule that contains a long exclusion list of
Oh God,
profiles,
yes.
roles, and even users?
And it's even worse when that validation rule includes the names of individuals who have long left the company.
Right. So you have does not contain, Salesforce admin does not contain, does not include. Yeah. So let's say we have a validation rule that prevents user from creating or editing a lead without a country. The thing is that I would like to be able to bypass this validation rule and many others. So from my experience, many times you want to mass update data or maybe perform a data fix of all data. So it's really difficult to perform this data fix because you have many validation rules that stopping you from doing it. So one of the things I'm doing, I'm adding to each of the validation rule kind of a bypass that when I'm going to perform this data fix, I just assign it to myself. Maybe I add an expiration date that I won't forget, and then I bypass it. I do the data fix, and then I remove it. So how do I do that? So here you can see a validation rule. Let's make it on edit. So we have one line. So you see this is the permission, and this is the name of the permission. I'll show you in a minute how you can add it. You click on insert field, and on the permission, you just select the custom permission you'd like. So let's check it out right now. So let's try to create a new lead. Company and save it. So we cannot. So what we can do is let's assign to our user the custom permission, the relevant custom permission. Let's do that now. For now, I'm going to do it only for my user. By the way, if you don't have Inspector, I recommend you to install it. It's a very useful app. So I'm going to the permission set assignments, And I'm going to assign to myself the bypass lead VR. And now when I'm doing it, now supposedly all of our validation rules has this line. So now I'm going to save it, and voila, we can save it. And it's a very useful thing. As I said, don't forget to remove it, because I think it's very important that we also, the admins, would have this validation rules that prevent us from doing some things. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you is about opportunity validation rules. Many companies do not want their users to edit close one loss opportunities. In order to prevent users from performing these changes, we can create a validation rule. But what if sometimes we do want to allow some users to edit a one loss opportunity? So let's go to the opportunity. So again, of course, we can do that. We can exclude some users. But what if these users do not have the same role or the same profile? It makes our life complicated. And this is what I like to do. So for example, for this validation rule, I just added a permission that called can update opportunity, and I put it false. It means that any user that is assigned with this custom permission is able to bypass this validation rule, meaning he will be able to edit a close one or close lost opportunity. So let's see how it happens. Let's go to this opportunity. And I'm trying to edit it, but I cannot. Now let's go to another user called Dan, and Dan is assigned with a custom permission. Let's see it. Let's go to Dan. Any questions so far, David?
Actually, Tim has a really good question, which I anticipated is going to come up. So we can address it later. If you want, we can address it now, like totally up to you. But Tim is asking, what's the difference between custom permissions and permission sets? And why should I use one over the other?
Well, permission set is more like a profile, although Salesforce is going towards using more of permission set that contains all the what you can do or not to do, or what like read access or edit access and tabs and IPs and many things that the profile contains. But the custom permission, as I said, it's like a flag. Think of that you want to enter a kind of a pub, and you have something on your hand, and they say, "Oh, you have it? Okay, you can go in." Okay, this is something like that. It's more simpler than a permission set, but with permission set, you can assign custom permission inside the permission set. Does that make sense?
So I think, yes, it makes sense. And by the way, I think your example is a great one of essentially like giving out a pass to people. So at the risk of simplifying it even further, I would say it's sort of like, imagine having a custom checkbox on the user, and we say if the user has this checkbox populated, then let them go through, and let's say the validation rule shouldn't apply to them. So it's a very simplistic on-off type switch.
That's true. I usually do not use the checkboxes on the user, because then
I agree. I'm saying that custom permissions are way more elegant of a solution versus having checkboxes on the user that folks can unintentionally play with.
Okay, so as you can see, we are on Dan's user, and he has the can update opportunity. So let's check this out. Let's log in with Dan and enter the opportunity. And let's try to open it. Yes, successful. So we were able to open it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to speak about is flows. Just a minute, I'll refresh my page. Yeah, okay. Okay, so what we can do with custom provisioning flows. So think about a scenario where certain users, in this example it's going to be managers, but it can be anything, that you want them to be redirected to a certain path, and all other end users will end up in a different path or an element, or for example, only managers would see this screen and others, the employees, would see this screen. So this is a very, very simple screen flow. So what I did, I added a decision at the beginning, and here you can see, again, I added the permission and then manager info screen permission equals true. And once it equals true, it goes here. If it's not equals true, it goes here. I'm going to show you how we add it. We just write permission and just select what we want, and then that's it. So let's see how it's working in debug. And let's run it. So I'm an employee, okay? Because as you can see here, which is very useful, this permission is false. I don't have it. I'm not assigned with it. So by the way, I haven't noticed until now, but you can add emojis to the buttons. So I just added one emoji.
Emojis for the win.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll run it again, but now it's Dan's supposed to have, so let's run it with Dan. Supposed to be a manager. Okay, yes, he is a manager and he can be redirected to a different element or path or whatever you choose. And I think it's very, very useful. This is something they could definitely use in flows. As you can see, true, which means that he is assigned with a custom permission. Next, let's close a little bit. Okay, next thing I want to speak about is Lightning pages. So the first thing we'll go, let's close these ones. We don't need ones. Yes. Okay, let's go to account. I'm gonna go to the Lightning record page. So in this example, we were requested to add a flow, and this flow allows specific users to merge accounts and related contacts. But we've been requested to show it to certain users, not all of them. So as you can see in this page, every component we click, we have the component visibility. And everywhere you see it, it means that we can use the custom permissions. So here, if I go down, I already did it. I selected custom permission called merge accounts contacts. So, merge account contacts. Let's see how it's done. To add custom permission, we click on add filter, advance, select. We select permissions, custom permissions, and then we select the custom permission we need. For example, this one, done, and then equals true or false. We can use also false. So let's see how we can view it. Let's go. So here, because I'm not assigned with it, so I cannot see it. Okay, but let's bring Dan again. I'll bring another screen because we realized that there is a cache issue, so we couldn't see it immediately. So I would like you to see it immediately. Let's go.
You know, it's sort of like on those cooking shows where they take the raw ingredients, cutting up the vegetables, and they put it in the oven, and then magically they take out from the oven, it's all cooked.
So now I'm going to assign Dan his profile with the custom permission we need. What do we need? What do we need? Where's that? Merge. Yes, this is what we need. And let's bring it back and refresh. Let's hope it would work. Again, with the cache, for some reason it didn't work. No, it's not gonna work for me. Just a minute. I prepared a few windows because I knew there were gonna be some issues. Dan. Let's go to Dan. Let's try again. Just a minute. I'll enter his user. Let's make sure he's assigned with it. Let's go to the account and let's hope for the best. Okay, as far as I remember, I didn't do a mistake. Merge accounts. Great. Let's see. No, it's not gonna work. Not gonna work. Okay. Let's assign it with the permissions. Sorry about that.
It's okay. That's part of
Yeah.
the fun of doing a live
Yeah,
stream.
yeah. Yes, yes, yes. We
So,
have
by the way,
some,
as Gidi is
yeah.
experiencing this, I'll tell you guys that something that I've found particularly it is frustrating, and I am not sure if it's really a Salesforce issue or a Chrome or just browser issue, where if I will do something as simple as changing a page layout, adding a field onto a page layout, and I go ahead and I save the page layout and I go back as the user and I refresh my screen a whole bunch of times and it's not reflected. And I'm like, did I hit save or did I not hit save? Am I imagining it? Am I drinking something? Like, I don't understand. And I go back into the page layout and I go into edit mode and I see that it's there. And I go back to the page and I refresh a bunch of times and it's still not updating. And it is a browser. It's not Salesforce. That is a
Yeah,
browser cache issue because
yeah,
if you end up going into incognito window, it's there immediately.
yeah. It especially happens with the Lightning record pages. This is where it especially happens. Let's hope it would work.
Oh, we've got a suggestion here. Hold on. CG, I don't know CG's what the initials stand for, so I'm going to call you
Oh,
CG.
okay, okay.
Set up session settings, caching, and
What-
deselect enable secure.
Yeah, yeah. What? Sorry. So what was
I
that?
put it up on the screen. Set up session settings, caching, Clay 7. Your name is not Clay 7. It's probably Clay.
Wait. I want to go there.
Set up
Setup,
session
caching.
settings, caching.
I'm learning something. No session
No, no, no.
caching.
No. In Salesforce. Sorry, I was looking at the
Ah,
comments. In Salesforce, in session settings,
sorry. I thought you were talking about the browser itself.
Play
Session settings
Gallardo.
and
So
caching.
deselect. Where was it? Enable secure.
Caching.
By the way, I found myself for the last few weeks. I found myself
Which
in
one?
this screen
Select
like at
enable
least 4
secure.
times a week, and it is just way too long to be manageable.
Which one of them? And then
Enable
deselect
secure.
enable
Caching.
secure.
Caching. And so you want to clear out enable secure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anyhow, I have made it because it's now showing, as you can see. Uh, we've made it. Okay. Great. I hope it will work now because the next thing I'm going to show is again on Lightning Record page. You can also use dynamic actions and then you can select certain button that you want to display or not display to certain users. And again, you can play with it, show or not showing the certain button, which is very useful.
By the way, that goes directly to Denise had exactly this question. I'm putting it on the screen right now for folks to see.
Okay.
Denise asked exactly this question. Is it possible to utilize custom permissions to allow a button on a page layout to only be visible for certain users? So the short answer is yes, absolutely, but only for custom objects. I believe even still as of now, dynamic forms are not available for standard objects.
Dynamic actions do, dynamic force not, as far as I remember.
Oh, right, right. I'm sorry. Thank you for clarifying. Yes,
If I
dynamic
remember
actions,
correctly.
not dynamic forms. Right.
But now we're going to speak about dynamic forms, because now we can control which field to display depending on custom permissions. And in this example, I selected a full section with a few fields in it, and I just show it to certain users. Okay, let's hope it's going to work again. Really hope so. We'll try it after we change the settings. Let's see if it's going to work. So we're done. I'm gonna show the record, which I couldn't see. No, it's not working. I don't know, but I'll try to add it to myself. I think that when I add it to myself, it's working. So I'm just gonna show it. Yeah, I practice a lot, and it worked sometimes, but there
It's all
is the
good.
catch. Yeah. So okay, let's go for the visibility. I think this one would work with the same user. Let's refresh it. And now we should see exactly, we should see this one, the agreement information here. So again, so you can do one field, two fields, and you can do a full section, and we can do an action. So many things that we can control their access to. By the way, there are more things that you can do with it. There are dependencies. For example, you can decide, if I go to the custom permissions, let's go to switch back to classic. So what I did here, it means that in order to assign specific custom permission, you need another one to be assigned to the users. So if you're trying to add, you see, this is the required one. So if you're trying to add switch back to classic, but the user is not assigned with Salesforce Admin, you will not succeed. Okay? Also, it depends if it's assigned to permission set. I don't want to go there, but just practice. So sometimes maybe you want to prevent by mistake to assign a admins. This is, for example, this is for admins. So you want to prevent other admins to make a mistake and assign it to a standard user. So you add this dependency, and then when you will try to assign it to certain users that do not have the Salesforce admin, you will not be able to do that.
Having
And
a
I think that,
prerequisite.
yeah. And I think we're done, David.
Awesome. All right, let's switch over to the Q&A because we are short on time and we have a whole lot of comments and questions that are worth following up on. So let's do this. Okay, so some of the questions that we have over here. So Denise's question we actually took care of. So let me show you. Here's the question that I have in mind. And this we actually took care of. So let me mark that off. And Christy has a really good question over here. How do we know when a custom X, like a permission or function, will put the org at risk during a release?
Trying to understand when a custom X.
So in other words, we have an upcoming release and there are some custom permissions or function of some kind. And
yeah,
how do we know whether or not it's going to put the org in at some type of risk? I have a quick answer for that myself.
if you're talking about the custom permission or any permission,
I think she's really talking about any permission.
I haven't experienced anything like that in the past, but again, this is why it's first deployed to your test environment.
Exactly.
So
it's really
I
important.
know you cannot test everything. Okay, I know, but yet.
In the perfect world, we're testing it in some type of a sandbox first in order to confirm.
Yeah.
This goes back to having a checklist.
Yeah, there's no other way that I can think of.
Once we experience the pain the first time, we realize put it on the checklist, the deployment checklist, the pre-release checklist. Check the following types of permissions and other settings that could throw a monkey wrench into something that we're doing. Okay, so Tim's question we already took care of, and Tim actually has another one. Ran into today in Lightning, trying to create a new task off of a contact, but the account and contact don't pre-populate. Oh, that's actually regarding the caching issue, though I'm not so sure exactly what might have happened over here. In Lightning, trying to create a task off of a contact, but the account and the contact should have pre-populated. The account would not, but the contact should have, Tim. That's odd if it didn't. Yeah, I would test that out.
Yeah. Not sure if it's a custom field button.
Right, it might be a custom visual for something that's made to look like. That's my guess. Okay, we do have, just to share with you, for those who are not on the YouTube stream, who are watching elsewhere, because most of the attendees are on the YouTube stream, some of the checklists that folks have. Actually, Christy did have one other question, and then I'm going to go through real quick some of the checklists, that ideas that some people have put out here. So Christy asked about, this is going back to the checklist, about having an in-app guidance checklist. So in-app guidance is absolutely fantastic. For those who are not familiar with it, in-app guidance is basically having directly in Salesforce, you can have some text that can appear. You could also have images, you could also have embedded video, etc. You could also have hyperlinks that could appear for certain users for a certain period of time. And you could absolutely have the text to be basically your checklist as in-app guidance, or a hyperlink to your in-app guidance, to your checklist. There are a couple of things to think about over here. First of all, if you always want, let's say, for all opportunities that are over a certain dollar amount, here are the things that people should think about, I would not bother doing that as in-app guidance. I would simply create a rich text component on the page layout and have it display when you have an opportunity that meets those criteria, and maybe even only for specific users. Similarly, that's what Path is for. So actually, you might be referring to that guidance for success, I believe it's called. Salesforce uses a lot of these terms interchangeably in a lot of different places.
And change the names,
and changes the names all the time. So under the path, it's referred to on the lower right. On the left-hand side, you could put a select few fields to highlight, but on the right-hand side, you could have what's referred to as guidance for success. And over there, you could also put like a bulleted list. When an opportunity is in the following stage, here are the different things to think about, the things to remember, the things to do. But it's not actually tasks. It's just a written list. So you could totally do that depending on the nature and the applicability of the checklist that you have at hand. But the truth is, what the focus of this entire session was not so much about checklists for the end users, more for us as the Salesforce professionals, the admins, the developers, the project managers, the BAs, the people responsible for the Salesforce configuration, to help us selfishly to be better at our jobs. I'm not saying we shouldn't think about the end users. We're thinking about the end users all the time. But I'm thinking for now a little bit more selfishly about the Salesforce professionals. But I just want to throw some others out here. So Sybil has gathering requirements for new projects. Totally agree with you. It is so incredibly important, and having a checklist would be very, very helpful. Struggling with the concept of using multi-select pick lists for Salesforce users to mimic a checklist.
I think you're going to say don't use multi-pick.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, Greg, I'm not trying to embarrass you by any means. The issue is you had me at multi-select pick list. No, you don't want to do it. Talk to me offline. No, you don't want to do that. So hang on one second. Let me see if there were some others before we drop off. Oh, no, Denise. Yeah, we have a couple of others. Denise mentions for new deployments, troubleshooting, onboarding, gathering of business requirements. Barbara suggested post-deployment steps. We talked about that quite a bit, actually. And when we say post-deployment, it could be something, for some users, it could be something as simple as introducing them to a new list view that we made available that's really going to help improve their productivity as users. So things like that are very, very helpful. Documenting old automation checklists, especially for those of us who are focused on taking old legacy workflows and process builders and turning them into flows, having a checklist of even the process by which we are reevaluating the legacy automation. Let's identify who's the subject matter expert on it? Who needs it? Why do they need it? For what business processes is it needed? Who is going to be responsible for turning it into a flow? Who's going to be responsible for testing it and confirming that it works as expected? When are we going to delete the legacy piece of automation that we're now replacing with the flow? So you could totally create lots of different checklists just around that type of initiative. Jason mentions troubleshooting checklist. Tim mentions having a new employee and when employees leave the organization. So yeah, these are all great. And by the way, I can think of a million more. So for those who are watching the replay, if you've got any other thoughts on different kinds of checklists that Salesforce professionals can benefit from, go ahead and drop a note down below, and we definitely want to hear from you. And with that, let's wrap it up because we're past the top of the hour. Gidi, thank you so much for joining me today. This was so much fun.
David.
And thank you for sharing even the existence of custom permissions with for so many people who had no idea. What the heck is that? You mean permission sets? What are you talking about? So thank you. This was really great.
Thank you very much.
All right. I'll see you all next time. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.